Now here's your host, Chris Cooper.
Hello, this is Chris Cooper, and a big welcome to the Business Elevation Show today. We're going to have an amazing conversation today with Jyoti Ma. I can't wait. I hope wherever you are around the globe, that life is good for you, and you are managing to contribute to creating a better world through your work. That's what I think the focus of the show is these days, is about how do we do business in a better way? How do we develop and change and adapt our thinking such that we can contribute to making this world a better place rather than taking from it, rather than damaging it, rather than impacting it? How do we nurture us people, and how do we connect and come together through business to do our work in a better way, in a wiser and smarter way? And therefore, what I'm wanting to do too within the show is to bring you fascinating, wise people from around the globe who are experts in their field, who can share with us ideas and initiatives that can help us to step up and make our contribution, and help to improve the lives of those around us and the nature of around us. So today we're going to be talking with Jyoti Ma, and we're going to talk about reciprocity and collaboration and a new paradigm for business and humanity. Important stuff. It feels like we need to be talking a lot about the important stuff and thinking about what is our role within it. I also want to say a big thank you to the wonderful Molly Harvey. Molly very, very kindly introduced me to Jyoti Ma. She was very excited about making the introduction, and spoke so highly of my guest today, that I knew that we had to meet and have a conversation. Molly Harvey, in a little bit in thanks for what she did in introducing me. I was had an Easter break last week, and I replayed the show with Molly Harvey on make changes, not excuses. And Molly is just the most insightful, wonderful human being, and people really did resonate with that conversation around making changes and not excuses. And if you were thinking about how do you step up, how do you contribute to your work, then go and listen to that interview in the archive. The other thing that we're starting to do now on the show that you might be interested in is that we're starting to put the shows onto YouTube as well, which we've not done before. But I'd love to say thank you as well. I've been very surprised. We've been in the show for 13 years, but I've been looking at the amount of you who are listening to this show, and I've just been a little bit blown away. I think one of the months we've had 60,000 people access the show in a month, and another month 48,000, and I'm just a little bit blown away that you're enjoying this. So do keep the communication coming through, and let me know if you've got ideas, thoughts for great guests and great topics. So let me tell you a little bit about Jyoti Ma. She's an internationally renowned spiritual teacher, and she's a visionary leader. And she's got such a deep commitment to honoring the earth and all of its peoples. She is the spearhead behind many transformative projects that embody both sacred wisdom and foster interconnectedness. Um, she has some really fascinating titles and experiences, which we'll delve into and try to understand a little bit more soon. She's the grandmother, vision keeper of the Center for Sacred Studies, the co-founder of Kavumari, and a driving force behind initiatives like the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers and the Unity Con-cert. And she's played a pivotal role in bridging spiritual traditions and fostering global collaboration. I mean, Jyoti Ma, she's clearly all over the globe when I look at and the people and the places that she visits and experiences. Amazing. She's the founder of The Fountain, and she's championed an economic model rooted in reciprocity, collaboration, and reverence for nature, and aims to restore harmony between humanity and the earth. Her work as a delegate of the Mother Earth Delegation of United Original Nations has further propelled a global movement dedicated to activating a new era of harmony and sustainability. So we're going to talk today about spirituality, community building, reciprocity, collaboration, and this new paradigm for business and humanity. So a big welcome to Jyoti Ma.
Hi, Chris. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm honored to be sitting at your table today. And what an amazing way to open up with dialogues and conversations between us all, those that are listening and you and I that are sitting here stirring a pot of possibility and wonder. That would be my hope.
Yeah, mine too. Mine too. And I would also just say to people who are listening to this, do take a maybe have a unless you're driving, of course, maybe take out a piece of paper and have a listen to the wisdom that comes out of the conversation today and think, are there one, two, or maybe three actions you could take or golden nuggets that could help you to unlock an opportunity? So do that. I think it's worthwhile to record and reflect and think. So, Jyoti Ma, could you tell us a little bit? It's lovely to hear about people's background and experiences, but what was life like for you growing up, and what experiences shaped this fascinating journey that your life has taken?
Well, as my elders would say, I'm starting my 77th year walk around the sun. Um, I was a girl born really born in the Black Hills of South Dakota, which is interesting because I like to say, if you sit and look at your life, there is a divine plan unfolding in it if we can get out of its way, if we can make choices to keep empowering that. And mine got seen as I got into my 60s, really, and looked back at where my path had taken me because my mother put my feet on the soil of the Black Hills, which are called they're the sacred site for the Great Sioux Nation. And that site in English is the heart of everything that is. And so my feet were put there as a small child. And then I was raised a lot in the South, where there was a lot of division. So I got exposed to some of what that meant as a girl and as a young girl. Women were supposed to be seen and not heard. That was the rule back in those days. Um, but then it was I was 53 years old when Grandpa Eugene Black Bear, who's a Cheyenne, took my husband, myself, and a woman that's walked with me through all of this work for many, many decades, to sit us up on a sacred mountain there to fast for 4 days without food and water so we could listen to what that sacred mountain needed us to hear and how we could serve the earth herself. And we did that for 4 years in a row to qualify ourselves into another, it's kind of like many people in the West really look at education through academia. But there is also a deep education rooted in nature. There is an intelligence that is far beyond ours of nature that if we begin to connect with her again and she will educate us or re-educate us or help us remember how to come back to ourselves and live with respect from one another in all life, so that's the school of the Mother Earth and Mother Law, based on original principles. And those original principles in those early days were and are heart, unity, love, compassion, reciprocity, tolerance, respect for all life, and all life is sacred. These are some of those original principles, that original way of life when we lived in a unified way with nature, when we knew we were a part of her, and she would care for us if we would listen. So that impression when I was that young baby born in the Black Hills to return later in my 50s and middle 50s to start an education with the earth herself through the original people and the teachings and the wisdom that they carried brought me into my world work. And so I'm always amazed when we take a moment and examine where we came from, how we came in. We might find out more about what we're really doing now, or maybe what we've forgot to do.
Yeah, so listening to what you just shared there is is it that we lost the ability to notice and observe? You sat on that mountain for 3 or 4 days, just I guess absorbing and noticing what was around you. And have we have we disconnected ourselves from that ability to notice? And what is and actually appreciate what is truly important.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's just in these last, 1,000 years that we have gotten so far away, really 500, when we cut ourselves from nature and started to move towards a materialistic worldview where we were colonized into a kind of a spell that disconnected us from that intelligence of nature. And nature became a commodity. So all of our principles then got based on competitiveness. It got based on division. It got based on productivity through valuing money above life. When we began to practice extraction, we didn't in the old days, they would say, this really got me when I heard this story from one of the elders. In the old days, if we were going to cut down a tree, we all gathered to see how would that affect the next 7 generations. If I cut down that tree, what am I taking away from the next 7 generations? That's where the value of life, you see, it is very vivid when we make decisions from that place. So yes, right now, as we know, we're at the end of a time. There is a prophecy called the Eagle Condor prophecy, because most of our original people, indigenous people around the planet, they were the original caretakers. And so the Mother Earth actually gave them her mother law so that we would walk on with those principles that I just spoke about. And that created a field of reciprocity, and all life was valued. Everything you came with to the table to care for the village was seen as sacred. And it took all the interconnectedness of each of those gifts of people for us to have a whole society that was balanced and sustainable, and was doing ritual with the earth, was listening to the earth, was following her instruction, had a relationship with her. So when that got cut, so did that way of life. It got oppressed, it got locked up, it got harmed, it got destroyed. There was a genocide of many peoples, of our original peoples, that occurred when that cut first started. Then this wave started to move, and we started to move now into that more materialistic world that I just described. Now we're in the return journey. The Eagle Condor prophecy says that the ending will fall into the beginning in 2026. And that's not very far away. When I first heard this prophecy, this part of the prophecy, because my community and I have been indoctrinated, initiated, instructed, and are still listening to and following the instruction of the original people. And we remembered ourselves. They helped us remember ourselves so we could come back to that place of original way of life for our children. We wanted our children to still have that possibility and that relationship with creation. So, it's that prophecy says that as the ending falls into the beginning, you must watch the ending to stay informed, but stay focused on that which is breaking through into the new dawn. That which is breaking through will be those individuals and organizations and movements that are based on those original principles I spoke about. When I first heard this part of the prophecy in 2013, I didn't quite understand it, which you don't. But when you look now at these last, we're in the last 2 years of that 13 years. Look what has happened with the pandemic. Look how the cleansing is going deeper and deeper. And now she's giving us a message for these last 2 years which says, I can no longer carry the maladies that you put on me and are still putting on me. She tells us that by the solstice of this year, we must make a big choice for humanity. Can we step out of our materialistic thinking? Can we look in the mirror and see those places, our patterns that we have been swallowed by, that separate us and do not allow us to honor the diversity of humanity? Because that is also an honoring that comes out of the original days. So all of the instruction you see is there. And our original people walk with this, and they walk in with this line of knowledge unbroken through a horrendous history to still sit here now at the world table with us all. And as we take the thread that we've been given and bring it to the table, what she says right now is light it up, be as authentic as you can be, because that is a gift to us all. And then the original people will help us weave these threads so that there's a new tapestry that's actually revealing itself, even as we talk today.
I'm seeing through and experiencing through my conversations a shift in terms of people, not everybody, but people starting to really listen to Indigenous populations and want to learn from them. Which I think is a real, I would say, I think we are my 555th interview on this show. I would say in this phase, in the 13 years since I've done it, that's one of the key themes that I'm really noticing. So there is that, I mean, that must be, is that part of the work that you've done? Is it or is it a natural part of this cycle of going back to the beginning again? I'm just trying to understand that. So why, thank goodness, are people starting to listen to and starting to respect the wisdom of past generations of people from different backgrounds now, when maybe they weren't so much 5 or 10 years ago?
Someone said just the other day in a conversation, we're in the middle of an evolutionary revolution. And because we're in a motion with evolution itself, and evolution is not personal. It just is constantly moving and evolving itself into the higher understanding of self, higher perception. So there are certain times they say that we are moved through 26,000 year cycles. Okay. And that we're at the end of one of those 26,000 year cycles, at the very, very end of it. And that's why the ending is falling into the beginning, because as that happens, then out of that, the ashes of that ending will emerge, like you're talking about, this new 26,000 year cycle. So we're right there. We came at a very amazing moment on this planet, never been experienced this way before by our humanity. So it is a big moment of choice. But because it's moving us that way, things are moving faster. I was also with some of the mamos. There are what they call the 4 original people that live in Colombia. And they still have many that live in villages high up in the La Sierra Nevada that have never been touched by the West. They still have lived in all this time in that original way of life. And now they're coming down because they say this is a critical moment, and they're coming to bring some instruction to us. And that kind of instruction is coming from our original people all over this planet. So we have all that we need to meet this evolutionary moment and allow ourselves to move into a higher understanding and to return to that original way of life. So while I'm with some of those, some of the mamos those are the spiritual elders and leaders of the 4 original people, and they were the Kogi. Some people there might have heard about the Kogi. They prefer to be called the Kagba Nation. We had traveled up to the Arctic, and that's a longer story than we have for today. But they had been invited, we had been invited into the Arctic Assembly there, where there were about 3,000 world leaders and organizations and people and original people that had gathered there. And the mamas had been invited to bring a message, which they did to the whole General Assembly. And when they were, now these are some that had come, never been in an airplane, never been out of that land they live in. Can you imagine what it's like to move out of that very, very, very different world of nature, get on an airplane, get in elevators for the first time? Now we're walking through the sea of people, and they really can't, there's so many different languages as they're moving through the sea of people, but they can hear a different way because they still live in that other way of life. And so that night at dinner, we're sitting at the table, and they said, I hear them all talking about climate change, climate change, climate change. But the world is heating up, and the ice is melting, and all of this. But don't they understand that if they just keep talking about all that, they're putting more wood on the fire? Can they take a seed and offer it to Mother Earth? Then they will find solution.
Wow.
I thought, that was, wow, what an insight, what an insight. So some of the work that they're bringing to us now are those seeds we can put in the earth. And some of these people you mentioned, some of these organizations, they are all waking out of this stupor. They are all beginning to remember who they are. They are all beginning to listen to something that's so much bigger than any single one of us. And they are really putting them, they're walking their talk. I was on a show a couple of weeks ago, and the question we were given to ponder was, what did you do when you knew? And the earth is shouting out, I can't do these maladies anymore. I mean, when the mamos finished laying down sacred prayers over in Iceland and Greenland to help bring this balance and to listen to the mother in the north to see what she needed to bring a balance that would affect the whole world, they stopped at the volcano to close things there. And they told everyone when they left, you better listen because Mother is about to move in a very strong way. And if you listen to her, she'll go underneath your villages and into the sea. If you don't, she'll have to go over them. So then they went home. 2 days later, thousands and thousands of earthquakes shook Iceland. And as you all know, then the volcano went off and it went under. They've only lost a few of the houses there. So can we listen to her right now? She's telling us what we can do to make this different. So what did you do when you knew?
So this is really interesting and very important. This comes down to more than noticing. It is about listening and realizing that actually there is a communication going on, I guess, between the earth and you and it. It's we're not in control of it. We're not in control of the volcano, are we?
No.
Well, I've just got about 3 minutes to a commercial break, but something that I think is adorning that I realized in my own work a couple of years ago is I do a lot of work with companies and leaders and teams and cultures. And I realized that my work was actually all about energy and the flow of that energy. And,
Right.
and I was hosting an event of my community yesterday of UK members, and it was something that was coming in conversation all the time. But actually, these very very accomplished uh, business people and thought leaders, and it was really coming very clearly that people were starting to live their life on a much more energetic plane and going with the feeling and going with the energy and avoiding the negative energy. And I wonder,
Mm-hmm.
is that because we have to speed up I mean, actually, if we realize that and we just go with that energetic flow and we try and put things into flow, does that enable us to act and move forward more quickly than putting all this thought into it? I don't know if I make any kind of sense, but there's
No,
something.
you do. You do make sense. It's like, if are we going to guide with the mind, or are we going to guide with our heart?
Yeah, yeah,
When we sit down and listen, we're in our heart, and then we follow something. When we're in our mind, then our ego gets very involved in the constructions of things, even with good intention, but it's still based on a less a lower perception with life and that energy of life that you're talking about. So when you really are guided through the intelligence of heart and love and unity and that kind of interconnectedness and understanding, then you're shown where to go. It's like you live in the moment more. When you don't live in your present moment, then your mind runs ahead of you, and when it does, it usually gets scared. Or if you don't live in the present moment, your mind goes behind you, and then it pulls regret in. But if you just live in the present moment and know, we were talking before we got on the show about how we're both so busy right now because everything's speeding up. Everybody's complaining about it. It's really strong. And it's not like we're going out to get something anymore. It's pouring into us. And so now we've got to learn, how do we hold this and how do we catch this? And if this is all energy, then if I'm focusing on those principles, then what flows to me will be from those principles. If I'm focusing on greed, then what flows to me is going to be more negative in its nature, possibly, and I'm going to lose focus off of life and into something that will really help me make a really good illusion here. But is it serving life? Is that source, that green source, if it's put in those original principles, then it's a green source that's going to take care of our life. It's going to flow unbounded. It's going to be realizing that the value of each of us is what we are in our authenticity, and that comes forward more.
Yeah. My that's really really thought provoking. And my mother keeps every time I speak to her, she keeps telling me to slow down, take it easy. But I'm like, but Mum, I've never felt more alive than I feel right now. And I'll slow down when I'm like, my uncle died a few weeks ago, sadly. That's the time to slow down. There's too much to. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, and you have to breathe, and you have to relax and calm. But actually, I feel more alive right now than I've ever felt.
Well, some of the instruction is, how can you rest in the movement,
Yeah, yeah,
because we're in a birthing movement. So the quickening of birth is happening, and birthing is messy. So can we be humble enough to just allow life to push us where it's taking us next? Because it's pushing us now. Evolution is, it's birthing into the next era.
yes. Well, on that note, we're going to go to commercial break now. We'll be back again in a couple of minutes. And I mean, expect more wisdom and golden nuggets and the second half of the conversation as we really start to move further into understanding and insight and thinking more about reciprocity and collaboration and this new paradigm that is just so important. It sounds to me, maybe explore that too, that actually might be some timescales here that if we don't get our act together, maybe Mother Earth might do something about it. And we're seeing it. We're seeing extreme weather patterns. We're seeing volcanic action. We're seeing all sorts of things right now, and it's speeding up. So we're back with you again in just a couple of minutes. Join us after the break.
You are tuned into the Business Elevation Show with your host, Chris Cooper. If you have a question or comment about our show, please direct your emails to chris@chriscooper.co.uk. That's chris@chriscooper.co.uk. Now back to Chris Cooper.
Hi, this is Chris Cooper. I'm with Jyoti Ma, and we're talking about reciprocity and collaboration. And yeah, I mean, this for some of you, this will be really kind of thought provoking. What we're what we're discussing, and you may have to just go away and have a contemplate with this. Maybe go and have a walk through a wood or a forest, and have a reflection, and start to think, is there more going on than I actually realize? Is there more
Mm.
I appreciate? Yes, yesterday I have a community of wonderful people, and we were together in Hampstead Heath in London, and we were walking through a forest, and somebody said, "Shall we honor the trees?" Now, and this is a very business audience, a very thought leader audience. And we actually, this person, Shobna, very kindly did a meditation where we honored the trees, and it was amazing the connectedness that we felt. All of us, it impacted all of us, even the more hardline business people amongst us.
Mhm.
Realization that there is an energy there, there is a relationship there, and an interconnectedness. It was brilliant yesterday to experience that. I think that's something we should maybe all consider.
Well, it is moving because we're evolving, right? And so there are many more businesses and organizations that are starting to sit one or two seats, depending on the size, for Mother Earth to sit at the board table, to have elders. Our whole organization listens to the instruction of the elders, and we go where they guide us, because they're catching this intelligence, and it's showing them how we need to walk through this in order to get to that new era together. And so people are incorporating this understanding. We did some training last year because we also realized many of us are being trained to be the bridges.
Yeah.
Your program is one of these insignificant bridges, and so you're as a bridge. You are then got one foot in that old Western worldview that's starting to fall down, and you've got another foot that's pulling you and guiding you with how to get over the bridge and back to some of that original understanding of how significant you are as a human being. And so those are some of the ways that it's starting to percolate and change the form of our cultures and return the form of our societies back to that interconnected knowing of diversity and intelligence of nature. Stop Ecocide is also another great movement that's happening around the planet, where full countries now are starting to step up and make this law of stop ecocide, so that if you do something to harm the earth, Mother Earth, then you can be brought up in a world trial, for the crime of doing harm. This is where some things in our civil systems have to shift and change in order for us to come back to an understanding. If we do harm to the earth, we do harm to all. And so if that many rights of nature movements are in place, things that are saying this river is a being and she has rights.
Yeah.
uh, if you start to pollute her, if you disregard her flow and dam her, or what changes in the ecology does that bring? And when that brings that level of change, how does that affect society? How does it affect the nature of who we are to each other? It's all interconnected. So it was interesting. I was gonna think of a little video I saw that was like 5 minutes long, and it was about the wolves, and I think that they were in Yellowstone,
Hmm.
um, and they had been gone, and they were extinct in the area, and they started realizing that, and people were afraid of them because they thought the wolves would harm things. But they started some that were getting ready to bring this motion of restoration and regeneration back to that space, saw that the wolves were an intricate original part of that space, and so they brought them back. And when they brought them back, then some of the caribou and things that ran, they started to be in a different part of the ecology. And everything moved itself, and new plants, the original plants, started to restore themselves, and the course of the river changed, and all of that went back to an original ecology, which means then that that field of reciprocity has been restored in nature, and then it starts to affect all of us. It affects everything about how we structure upon that. How do we care for that so we don't hurt it again? How do we set up our structures, our laws, so that we tend to that first? Because once we do, then will we bring that same level of reciprocity into our businesses, into our communities, into our families, into our global actions? You know, these are my questions to all of us.
Yes. I'm also wondering with political tension across the globe as well. With there's a describing there as a broken kind of Western system and ideals up against a more authoritarian section of the world, which there's that tension going on, which is very worrying right now, particularly as it gets in the way of significantly of what our attention and focus on healing this divide between nature and humanity. I don't know what you make of and what elders make of what's going on right now, and how do we also influence that to give attention to what you've mentioned there, stopping ecocide and changing political laws and influencing politicians to see it's not just about the money. I mean, there's just so much. I can't.
Well, this is one of those moments when you got to realize that that old structure you just described is falling down. Some parts of it may survive into the new, but we won't know that by our mind making an analysis of it. You see, that's still from the Western, how we dealt with problem solving before. It's when you move from just problem solving, there's still an object and there's still a division because one versus the other, right? Just like you're talking about. The in response to what the elders would say, they would say, we told you this was coming several generations ago.
Right.
We told you then what you could do to make this be more gentle in itself, because it was coming. It was part of the story, the old story that's ending. They had already been told this. Then they came back and they tried again. We wouldn't listen. Then they came back again and they tried again. They've been telling us this from the beginning, and so they have the instruction. So the question would be then, why are we listening? What keeps us from turning around and saying, this is the destruction that's happening right now, this war on women and children. Mm-hmm. Huge. I've never in my lifetime, there was World War II just coming to an end when I was born. And so there have been many countless wars since then. But this is starting to move into that place where it's against the women and the children. So we're coming down to those life makers. Mm. We got to come back to that mother that is the life maker of it all. What does she need right now in this birthing time? And if we're listening, can we have the courage just to follow what she says she needs, even if it seems like it's completely crazy? Because as Einstein said, you won't find the solution in the box that gave you the problem. That's my words, but that's kind of, we got to come back to that. We got to step out of this box. We got to open up to new possibility. We got to trust ourselves and get out of our minds. As one of my elders said, that the most important journey we're going to make right now is that 16 inches from the mind to the heart. Yep. The mind has to die into the heart.
Yeah.
because then that brings us into this next part of our story, and Earth's story is instructing us if we'll listen.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of motion, isn't it? It's a different kind of wording. It's a different kind of thinking or not thinking. It's about going into ceremony, like when I sat on that mountain, sit there to catch the vision in that instruction of what do you need me to do, and then to do it.
I referred to this. People may have heard me refer to this before, but I read a book called The Power of Decision by Charles Barker. It really impacted me and has sat with me for a lot of years. And that was that ideas are seeking a home as much as you're seeking them. And it was this notion that ideas are, are kind of a living energy, and they're looking for a home. And and they probably wouldn't come to you if they didn't think you were a possible home for them. And I just found that really quite a powerful distinction. If an idea came to me and I thought that was crazy, like you just described, it's kind of too out there. I'd now, and if it keeps nudging me as well, I'm now more open to just go with it. Is that makes sense?
It does in my world, because that's how I live. You
Yeah.
know, when the elders came and started to teach us and help us remember these old ways, we sat in many ceremonies all night long. You know, we sat still. We listened differently. We didn't listen with our mind. We listened with our whole being. You know, it's kind of like right now, everybody, if you can just take a moment, go sit down in some place in nature, and just for an hour, give yourself at least an hour, just sit and be still. Don't speak. Watch what your mind does. Watch where you go. Where do you wonder? And when is that moment when all of a sudden you're no longer in motion, but you've reached a still point in yourself? Something can happen then. Something significant can happen when we get really still. If you remember during the pandemic, when everything stopped, some of the things that were in the news were, wow, mountains appeared. They didn't even know had been there because it had been covered up with smog. Dolphins swam up into areas they hadn't swam before because there were no boats, no motors, no anything. The deer were walking across streets. Nature was telling us something. I always go out in my porch, and I always go out before dawn and give my prayer for the day. And I was struck by, even in the middle of the night, sometimes when I'd go sit on my porch, all the birds were singing. It was singing. They were singing and they were singing and they would sing for hours. It was like a chorus. And wow, nature is so happy. Are we listening? Are we listening to her? She's telling us something very significant. Will this mean big changes in some of the ways we live? Absolutely. I had a home my community had a home in the Amazon jungle for 22 years. They call the people of the West the termite people, because everywhere we go, we eat it up. We eat up. We eat up. It's called a consumer's world, right? We consume. Everything encourages us to consume. What happens if we get still, like when everything stopped? What happens then when we get still? Does it readjust? Is if we start to get in our communities, if we start there by listening to the earth and bringing back that original ecology of life, how would that help us and inform us about how to make the new structure for how to govern ourselves and how to live together and how to deal with conflict when it appears? I mean, these are some of my questions. But when she gave me this mission called the Fountain, and then the elders of Columbia would call it the Fountain for Natural Order of Our Existence. And I didn't understand that at the beginning. And I thought, I'm not an economist. How do I come and sit and do? I'm a woman of prayer, but I don't know if how to do this. Well, that was probably what was the most important part, is to really be humble enough to say, I just don't know how to do this. And then everything started to come. And I would go to the elders there in Colombia. They would go into consultation with the earth. She would bring instruction. I would walk out that instruction with our team. We would hold a moment of gratitude, and then we would go back to get the next part of the instructions. And we've done that for almost 13 years, and that's what crafted the fountain. So we're going to have to go into some of that kind of relationship and instruction in order to get how our new models for our communities and for how we distribute amongst ourselves and how life runs itself and cares for itself. If we can listen that deeply, we'll get some of that instruction. And I would bet that many of your listeners here are already doing some of that.
Mm.
You know, I do travel quite a lot, or I have over my years, particularly in the last 40. And I meet all of these amazing, beautiful we are so creative in our nature. You know, we're so creative. So if we can just say, what do I do? All of a sudden, I started to see how what she was saying is that the economy of life had been turned upside down when we brought it into a materialized state. It was no longer in its right structure. It was upside down. And so in order to turn that table back on its right, on its legs again, so it can stand again in that way, there's going to be a turbulence moment when we turn the table for sure. But when we do turn the table, then all of a sudden, economy is not just about money. Economy has to do with currency of life and life source and how that source is used. It has to do with valuing everybody's contribution, and seeing it as very sacred to the whole of it all. And it starts to it requires an attitude of collaboration in order to activate the reciprocity, where all things then share the value of who they are. And through that sharing process and gifting process, the abundance of life starts to generate for itself, and then everything gets taken care of. You know, it's very then the table of life. Then we've returned to that original life through the economy of things. And so right now I'm in a lot of meetings all day long because the mother has said, I can't keep walking this way. I've given you so much time. I can't keep walking this way. I'm going to have to take on my healing if you don't assist me with it. If you don't listen to the original people, if you don't listen to the Kagaba Nation and the 4 original people and other original people around the planet, then I'm telling them what I need so we can do this more gently.
Yeah.
But it's up to you. You must make a choice now, you know.
Yeah. Still a little, the movie, the Avatar's sort of coming into my head.
Oh, yes. I love the tree. I wasn't crazy about all the war in there, but the tree and these peoples that lived with the tree and how to source the tree and listen to the tree and protect and care for the tree and their community. It had its issues, they had conflicts at times, but they all came back to the tree for the resolution of something. And so can we come back to the tree of life? Can we sit now and say, what do I do? And then can we, when we catch it, whether it's a dream or whether it's just something a thought you have, I know every single one of us can relate to a moment when we had that little voice say, you better, blah, 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 and we didn't do it. And then later we go, oh my gosh, we all have that. We all have that. We just don't talk about it, but we all have that and we can relate to it.
Yeah. Ooh, lot to think about. Do you have a final message you'd like to leave us with?
I would just say, water is life. So one place we can all start right now is to really listen to the water. Water is life. This is a water planet. We are water babies. When we're born, our water comes first and then we follow. We're made up of water. And so we've got to come back and start right there. So take care, sit with your river, see what she needs, ask her how you can best support her, how we can help her clear the pollutions out of her. What do we need to do with the ecology around her so that that restoration can start there? Go out in the morning and start your day with a glass of water. Greet the sun and give gratitude you have this day in front of us with this water of life in our hand, and whatever else your heart wants to put in that water. And then give the earth a drink of that water 4 times. Pour it 4 times, give it 4 sips, and then you take 4 sips for yourself, so that you will start your day with the water of life and honoring it in a different way. May it help your feet move more gently on this Mother Earth, and help us be still enough to make a good choice.
I feel we've so scratched the surface of what is possible through our conversations. There's so much more I'd love to ask you, but we're running out of time. Um, if people want to find out more about your work, where are the best places to go and learn and
TheFountain.earth is our website. And that'd probably be the best way to go. And you can look at the different projects that we're holding, the different conversations that we're in, some of the teachings that come forward, that will help us all know how to bring our own creativity into the solution of our time, and sit down and have these kinds of discussions. Everybody here carries a wisdom, and if we love ourselves enough and take all that baggage off of us that isn't us, come back to ourselves, then we'll begin the march to this new era.
visit thefountain.earth. There's also some very beautiful quotes I discovered in looking through your website, which is so insightful. If people mistakenly think that Indigenous populations are not wise, then just go and read those quotes. I remember spending some time with a Maasai tribe and just being bowled away by their wisdom and their insight. And we all need to listen. I think that's
the earth is pretty old. And thousands and thousands and thousands of years the original people lived taking care of it. Now it's only been this short period of time when we put ourselves into such a crisis.
so time to listen, time to notice, time for stillness and quiet, and getting out into nature and respecting it, and allowing ideas and inspiration to come through to you, and playing your part to step up and contribute to a better world. Being mindful of reciprocity, about the importance of giving and collaborating with others. We're in a very exciting time right now, a very challenging time. A gift to be here. You mentioned the end of a 26,000-year cycle, and we're living in it right now. There's a lot of change happening. There's more to come, but we can all play a role in what is a challenging but also very exciting journey, with lots of adaptation required to tip that bowl over. So, Jyoti Ma, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I'm going to go away and think about it all weekend without any.
I'll just end with one thing. What's just coming up for me is your first choice is, do you choose fear or love? They don't reside together. So when you don't know what to do, you can ask the question, what would love do?
Yeah.
And it might help you in your choosing.
So important, isn't it? Love.
Thank you for all that you're doing, Chris, and for everyone out there that's listening and all that they're doing. Let that become contagious.
On that note, everybody take care. We've got an incredible marketing expert Stuart McFall, but as you'd expect, high integrity, wonderful individual, and we'll share more about that show during the week next week. So join us for Stuart McFall next week. But any questions, comments in this interview, do drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you, and you'll be able to access it to all the different Apple and Amazon and Voice America, and we'll put this onto YouTube as well over the next week too. So take care, everybody. Go away, have a great weekend, or whenever you're listening to this week ahead. But think about reciprocity and collaboration, and think about your part in this new paradigm for business and humanity. And go and check out fountain.earth.
Have a blessed day.